Have you ever wondered how life-saving medicines make their way from the lab to your local pharmacy?
Is this medicine efficacious in patients and can we manufacture it in good quality? And those were generally the questions. If appropriately answered, the medicine would receive regulatory approval and then eventually be accessible.
Or how those treatments are priced to ensure both accessibility and innovation?
Goal of pharmaceutical innovations is to ensure that patients can access medicines in a way that is sustainable for healthcare systems, while also supporting a stream of innovation that continues to deliver improvements in treatment options available for patients.
But here's the question: how do we make sure this incredible breakthrough isn't just sitting on a shelf?
Just proving safety, efficacy, and quality is not enough. Now what we need to do is develop, demonstrate, and communicate the value of our medicines, affordability, even if the medicine has value, is it affordable, and the medical necessity.
It's about balancing science, economics, and humanity, a delicate but essential dance.
Compliance is non-negotiable, so everything we have to do has to be compliant by law. But beyond that, I tell my team, don't always wait for permission, do it, if needed, beg for forgiveness later on.
Today, we are going to unravel this fascinating world with one of its foremost experts, Dr. Indranil Bagchi. Indranil is the Global Head of Pricing and Market Access at GSK and a leader whose work directly impacts how therapies are brought to patients.
The reason I got attracted towards market access essentially is growing up in India, I have seen the first-hand impact of differential access and what impact it has on patients. And that's when I decided to make a change in some shape or form to this complex issue, like Kaushik referred to, of ensuring access on one hand and rewarding innovation on the other.
What advice would you give to aspiring professionals looking to build a career in this field?
Improve, don't prove. That's what I try to do. Build your brand and be a safe pair of hands.
So whether you are a healthcare professional, a student, curious about the pharmaceutical industry, or simply someone passionate about making healthcare better, this conversation has something for you. Welcome back to Drug Diaries, listeners. Have you ever wondered how life-saving medicines make their way from the lab to your local pharmacy? Or how those treatments are priced to ensure both accessibility and innovation? It's a process that's as critical as the discovery of the drug themselves, and it's called market access. Let me paint a picture. Imagine a groundbreaking new therapy that could transform the lives of patients battling a chronic condition. Scientists have poured years, sometimes decades, into developing it. And it's passed every safety efficacy test. But here's the question: how do we make sure this incredible breakthrough isn't just sitting on a shelf, out of reach of those who need it most? This is where market access comes in. It's a bridge between scientific innovation and real-world impact, ensuring that treatments are not only available but also affordable for patients around the globe. It's about balancing science, economics, and humanity, a delicate but essential dance that shapes the future of healthcare. And today, we are going to unravel this fascinating world with one of its foremost experts, Dr. Indranil Bagchi. Indranil is the Global Head of Pricing and Market Access at GSK and a leader whose work directly impacts how therapies are brought to patients. If you caught his talk at the SPOR conference, you will know he has a unique ability to simplify the complex and inspire new ways of thinking about healthcare. In this episode, we'll discuss why market access matters more than ever in today's value-driven healthcare ecosystem, how the industry is shifting its focus from safety, efficacy, quality to value, affordability, lifestyle. A brilliant quote that I've shamelessly stolen from Dr. Bagchi. And the role of data in shaping access strategies. Plus, we'll hear Indranil's insights on balancing affordability and innovation and what the future of pricing and reimbursement might look like. So whether you are a healthcare professional, a student, curious about the pharmaceutical industry, or simply someone passionate about making healthcare better, this conversation has something for you. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us for a fascinating journey into the world of market access. Indranil, welcome to Drug Diaries. It's an absolute honor to have you here.
Thank you, Kaushik. A real pleasure to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Can you share a bit about your career journey and what led you to your current role as the Global Head of Pricing and Market Access at GSK?
Yes, absolutely. Again, a pleasure to be here. So, just to introduce myself, Indranil Bagchi, as Kaushik said, I currently lead the pricing and market access function at GSK. My background, I'm a pharmacist by training, did my undergraduate degree in India, and then did a little bit of sales for Merck Sharp and Dome, and then moved to the States for graduate school. I did a master's in healthcare administration, and then went on to do a PhD in health economics. The reason I got attracted towards market access essentially is growing up in India, I have seen the firsthand impact of differential access and what impact it has on patients. And that's when I decided to make a change in some shape or form to this complex issue, like Kaushik referred to, of ensuring access on one hand and rewarding innovation on the other hand. How do you strike that right balance? So, given my background in administration and health economics, I actually started my career in then Smith Glenn Beecham many, many years ago, primarily in health economics and evidence, eventually moved to pricing and market access and led Pfizer's global market access team. I did the last 5 years at Novartis, leading their oncology market access, and then finally back to GSK to lead market access across the entire portfolio.
And going back to the sport conference, and that's where I met you, and it was such an inspiring talk. I really learned so much in those 15 minutes. You spoke about the industry's shift from safety, efficacy, quality to value, affordability, lifestyle. Could you elaborate on what this means for the future of market access?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think of drug development and the commercialization process, let's say 20 years ago, the primary questions that were being asked were the three questions, the first three hurdles of safety, efficacy, and quality. In other words, is this medicine safe? Is this medicine efficacious in patients? And can we manufacture it in good quality? And those were generally the questions, if appropriately answered, the medicine would receive regulatory approval and then eventually be accessible to patients. The way things have changed over the last 15, 20 years is now we have three additional hurdles. Just proving safety, efficacy, and quality is not enough. Now, what we need to do is develop, demonstrate, and communicate the value of our medicines, affordability, even if the medicine has value, is it affordable? And the medical necessity. What kind of therapeutic area are we talking about? What level of unmet need? And where does this medicine fit into the existing armamentarium that's available to healthcare providers? So, yes, today the conversation is around value, affordability, and medical necessity slash lifestyle.
So, balancing affordability with the cost of developing innovative therapies is a major challenge. How do you see the industry addressing this tension?
Yes, absolutely. So, the goal of pharmaceutical innovations is to ensure that patients can access medicines in a way that is sustainable for healthcare systems, while also supporting a stream of innovation that continues to deliver improvements in treatment options available for patients. In other words, on one hand, we would like our treatments to be available to as many patients around the world as possible. At the same time, we would like the sustainability engine, the innovation engine to be continuously fed so new treatments continue to emerge as the unmet needs change. The tension arises from the need to incentivize research and development on one hand, and at the same time making sure these new treatments continue to remain affordable and accessible to patients. Some strategies and considerations that the industry is adopting to address this challenge. Number one, focus on areas of unmet need. Gone are the days when we develop Me Too's, but we really try to focus on where is the unmet need and what is the incremental differentiation that a new treatment will bring to society. Deploy cutting edge science. Science continues to evolve and continues to improve, along with advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine language, AI/ML, as it's known. Applying AI not just to the drug development process, but also defining unmet need, tracking patients, targeting patients, as well as making clinical trials more fit for purpose for the future. Prioritizing research that addresses high burden diseases and unmet medical needs. And then finally, collaboration between the industry, the regulators, the agencies, and the payers together working towards the same goal, that is making our medicines affordable to as many patients around the world as possible.
Right. And around the world, we see diverse levels of affordability. How do pricing and reimbursement strategies vary across global markets?
Yeah, there are significant variations across global markets, as you can imagine. And these are usually influenced by local healthcare systems. No two healthcare systems are alike, the specific economic conditions in those countries, and regulatory frameworks. So, gaining access to these markets is complicated by the varying reimbursement policies that exist in these different countries, as well as maybe the specific states and insurance plans. Most recently, a survey found that of all the reasons a new medicine couldn't be achievable or couldn't take off was essentially with 50% of the medicines missing their forecast due to market access issues. In other words, if these issues are not thought through well in the beginning, then chances are your medicine is not going to succeed. The fact that makes this process complicated is that there are different archetypes that exist across the world when it comes to payers and payer decision making. We have countries that are focused on clinical effectiveness, where they focus on the specific effectiveness of the medicine. There are countries which are focused on cost effectiveness, and they talk about what's the cost implication of including that medicine in the formulary. There are countries which focus on budget impact, the overall impact from that medicine, whereas there are some other countries that focus specifically on the outcomes. So, depending on which archetype you're in, the overall strategy that you have for pricing and market access needs to be tailored to that specific country to make sure we meet the needs of the stakeholders there, the regulators, the payers, the policymakers, but most importantly, the patients.
Right. Wow, that was very well explained. How are real world evidence and health economics data shaping pricing and market access strategies?
Yeah, real world evidence is extremely important. As you know, historically, the industry has depended on clinical trials. So essentially, the two randomized placebo controlled trials used to be the gold standard. From there, where we have evolved is beyond placebo controlled trials. Now, what we look for is comparative effectiveness. So, essentially, how good is your treatment compared to the next best treatment that's available? And that may be the standard of care today. But what we are also realizing and have realized over time is all the questions that need to be answered cannot always be done purely through randomized controlled clinical trials. Also, randomized controlled clinical trials are essentially an artificial environment where patients are under a rigid system and they go through the process and they generate some response. That doesn't replicate how the real world is. That's where comes in real world evidence. So essentially stepping outside the clinical trial and essentially in a regular environment, how would the medicine perform? That's what real world evidence does. So essentially using databases and registries, trying to track patient outcomes over time after launch, and then essentially have that data replicate, support, or nullify the clinical trial data depending on how it shapes up. So again, real world evidence is an important complement to the gold standard that's clinical trials. Regulators have opened up a lot and they're really looking forward and have incorporated real world evidence into the assessment process, the regulatory assessment process. Payers and health technology assessment agencies have been slower to move in that field, but also they're trying to catch up and essentially trying to close the gap between regulators making the regulatory decisions and then payers and health technology assessment agencies making the access decisions using real world data along with clinical trial data.
Right. Right. And we are seeing that advanced analytics and AI and machine learning are affecting every aspect of the business. How do you think that the role of data analytics, AI, and machine learning is playing out in real world evidence and market access?
Yeah, I mean, AI/ML today, as you know, is everywhere. As expected, it's not a straightforward question or answer. There are people who are extremely excited about the possibilities of AI. At the same time, there are also experts in this field have raised some caution in terms of what can happen if artificial intelligence, progresses unchecked and what could be the implication for human society going forward.
Yes.
In the end, when it comes to industry and medicine, the primary focus of AI/ML is essentially accelerating stronger pipeline innovation. So, how do we target and develop our medicine? How do we drive innovation in our pipeline using genetic data, genomic insights, patient insights, and artificial intelligence and machine learning to unravel some of the biological mysteries that exist and understand the true pathology and cause of disease? That's where AI can help us essentially accelerate that process, which used to take years before, may be able to be done in months now. And we can do this in large part because of revolutionary advances in computational technology, AIML, combined with the huge amount of data that the industry
Right.
has. The repository of data that industry sits on forever has not been tapped into in the past. But now with these new tools of AIML, we can tap into that and essentially understand disease prognosis better, but
Mhm.
also help identify the molecules, the innovation that will help address some of those challenges that exist today. AIML has essentially transformed our ability to digest and make sense of vast amounts of data in a very short period of time, as I mentioned before, to get to
Right.
answers quickly, identify key insights, and make data-driven decisions that not only inform R&D and pipeline, but also inform the commercialization and market access strategies going forward.
Right. Dr. Bagchi, you are a leading voice and an amazing thought leader in the industry. After spending decades in this space, can you share some of the lessons that you've learned through the leadership journey that you've had in market access?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I have been with this discipline for the last 25 plus years. And in that time, what I've seen is market access and also health economics, which is my training, and these are adjacent disciplines. They have grown to be from being a more technical, discipline to a more general discipline. And what do I mean by that? Again, if you reflect 10, 15, 20 years ago, health economics, some of the pricing work that we used to do used to be very technical and used to have a certain stage that it
Mhm.
got involved in into the drug development cycle and process. But today, all these considerations need to start much, much early on. So previously, where we would do our phase three trials and essentially get the data and then make decisions on, okay, what's the value of this medicine? How do we get this medicine priced? And how do we make sure this medicine is available to as many patients around the world as possible? Today, that discussion starts much earlier, even before the clinical trials are started. We're testing our endpoints in phase two trials and then creating large outcome studies which generate data that basically shows how will the population respond to the treatment and what will their outcomes look like as and when the medicine is introduced to society. So essentially, market access has become a more central role in overall corporate and product strategy decisions as we take responsibility for a growing number of deliverables across the product lifecycle and essentially help drive the entire research, development, and commercialization process,
Mhm.
keeping in mind that one goal, there's a patient waiting at the end of the chain for the medicine somewhere.
That's very well said. What advice would you give to aspiring professionals looking to build a career in this field?
One thing I can say is always continue to be curious. Doesn't matter how long you've been in the industry or how long you've been with the profession. Once you stop learning, you start to stagnate. Improve, don't prove. That's what I try to do. I've had multiple roles across the industry, but every role that I've been in, I'm always trying to learn something new, whether it's a new therapeutic area, whether it's a new population, a new company, new people, new ways of working. But keeping that curiosity and keeping that spark is really important. The other piece is building your own brand. Essentially,
Mhm.
be a safe pair of hands. If you say you're going to do something, make sure you do it. That's how you build credibility, and that's you get known as a safe pair of hands, someone who would deliver on their commitments.
Wow, that's a very powerful advice. Improve, don't prove. I really like that. What are some emerging trends in pricing and market access that excite you?
I already referred to AIML, so essentially the
Mhm.
digital transformation and
Right.
integration of technology. Now, I have to say, I mean, as much as the pharmaceutical industry is innovation based in terms of embracing technology, we have not been that quick compared to, let's say, some of the other industries. Part of that is we are a very compliance heavy and regulation driven industry where any change takes longer. Having said that, now we start to see the possibilities with things like AI ML and what can be done. So overall, the digital transformation and the opportunity that lies with integration of technology is really remarkable. And that's something we look forward to. Also, public private partnerships.
Hmm.
Historically, industry used to kind of go on their own, but now we see more and more public private partnerships in terms of overall access efforts. This is especially important when it comes to strengthening of healthcare systems. In other words, it's not just the medicine, it's basically what environment is the medicine getting introduced in. Do we have all the things in place for the medicine to be used the right way and for the patient to encounter the appropriate outcomes? The way I see it is, if price is not a barrier, what else is getting in the way for the right patient to access the right medicine at the right time? That's where the public private partnership with governments, NGOs, etc. becomes important as we all work together towards removing all the barriers and then make sure our medicines are available to patients in need.
That's a fantastic point you mentioned about public-private partnership. And I had the privilege to be part of one such initiative, which was rolled out by AstraZeneca back in 2014, and it's still going on. It's probably one of the largest population health management program that we have seen in the world, and that was done in collaboration with the Ministry of Health Kenya, and there were NGOs like MPAD, JPIGO, AMREF. They all came together. There was WHO, and the objective was to identify patients who might be at a higher risk of developing hypertension and how AstraZeneca could make the medicine accessible for those patients. So, an amazing, amazing cause, and it was such a great learning for me to spend some time in Africa and going door to door in remote areas and learning from the patients and looking at some of the challenges that uh, patients face while accessing the medicine.
That's a great example you give, Kaushik, and that brings me to my other point about health equity. As we
Right.
all know, health equity is something that continues to get worse and worse over the years, and essentially the difference between people who have access to medicines versus those who not continue to increase. And this is an increased area of focus, not just for me, but also all of us involved in the industry. How do we get over this challenge? How you look like or where you come from should have nothing to do with your right to health. And that's
Exactly.
essentially what we are trying to address. So with things like tiered pricing, to make sure our pricing strategies fit the socioeconomic status and the ability and willingness to pay of the different countries, using efforts like emerging market brands, etc. But closing that gap in health equity and making sure patients around the world have access not just to medicines, but also healthcare services. This is something that cannot be done by the industry alone. This is something that cannot be done by governments alone. This does require multi-stakeholder engagement and industry and governmental partnerships.
Totally agreed. How do you see the role of market access evolving over the course of next 5 to 10 years, especially with the growing emphasis on value-based healthcare models?
Yes, that's a great question. So, look, with the push for value from evidence, and I referred to this already today as we are setting up our market access strategies, the work starts very early. It starts in research. But basically, market access has an increasing strategic role from early development to phase three to launch and then all the way to LOE to ensure we achieve successful patient access. There's a shifting paradigm towards value from evidence. In other words, you can take your value proposition to whoever the stakeholder is, but
Hmm.
in the end, if it's not backed up by appropriate evidence, then for that value proposition to get traction and be able to be listed in the formulary is close to zero these days. So again, that's why market access needs to be a central function. Again, going back to the previous theme of not being just a technical expert, but be a strategic partner to the overall drug development and commercialization process by integrating and driving strategy in close collaboration with other functions, research, development, medical, commercial, and then working with them together to essentially make sure the right patients are in the trial, the right endpoints are incorporated, and then the right endpoints are derived over the right time frame to make
Right.
sure the data that's generated meets the needs not just of the regulatory stakeholders but also of the payers, policymakers around the world. In
Right.
the end, market access is responsible for successful patient access, the end in mind, and therefore has a critical role in bringing this product to the patient.
What has been the most rewarding project or initiative you've worked on in your career?
That's a great question. It's hard to pick between your children. So I have worked on a lot of different areas in my career. But I would say, the last 5 years prior to coming to GSK, when I was at Novartis, I focused exclusively on oncology. And that was a chance really to understand in deep, the impact of cancer on populations, specifically breast cancer, but also around other cancer areas. So I would say some of the work that we did with breast cancer and essentially addressing the cause of cancer, taking a look at the unmet need, taking a look at all the different possible therapies, and then working with the different stakeholders in terms of making sure the right data is generated and the treatment is listed on the formulary. That's been some of the most rewarding. Certainly not the only one, but when I think of impact to humankind, working on cancer has been one of the most exciting moments in my career.
Oh, that's amazing. And how does it feel to have such a profound impact on the healthcare system in your capacity, in your position?
Well, again, going back to my cancer example, all of us know somebody somewhere who's been impacted by cancer. So, in the end, when we say all the great work we do, the reason we wake up in the morning and come to work is essentially because there's a patient waiting somewhere. In this
Yes.
case, all of us know somebody who has been impacted by cancer and the profound impact that may have had on their lives.
Yeah.
So, being able to know that I have been able to be a small part in that bigger
Mhm.
picture, essentially to make sure that one thing that needed to be in place for the patient to access their treatment, that's a wonderfully rewarding feeling. And that's why, again, as I say, why do we wake up in the morning and come to work? That's the driving force. That's our big purpose. That's why we are here, essentially to make sure we work in therapeutic areas that are of significance to patients, and we can really move the needle by making sure the latest therapies reach the patients in need.
With that answer, you nailed it. And if there's one thing you could change or you could implement in the global market access framework today, what would it be?
Essentially, try to close the gap
Hmm.
between the regulators, the payers, the health technology assessment agencies, and the differential needs that they have compared to what the industry brings forward. In other words, putting ourselves in the shoes of regulators and agencies and understanding from their perspective what they're looking for, but also having the regulators and the payers, HTAs, put themselves in the industry's shoes and basically understand there are multiple different questions to be answered. You
Hmm.
can only do so much. How can you develop a program that essentially meets the needs of so many different stakeholders? In other words, anything and everything that can be done to align these differential perspectives, remove the gap, and as a
Right.
result, make sure treatments reach society faster. That would be the ultimate goal.
Indranil, is there a book, talk, or resource that has profoundly influenced your approach to one, pricing and market access, and second, life in general?
Yeah, so that's a wonderful question. I'll answer it in a couple of different ways. In terms of a specific book that helped me in my career, not necessarily
Hmm.
related to market access, would be a book by Marshall Goldsmith, and the book is
Hmm.
known as "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." So
Right.
Marshall Goldsmith is a well-known coach who's worked with many senior leaders in industry and beyond. And essentially what the book alludes to is at a certain point in your career, you think if I continue to do what I'm doing, I'm
Hmm.
going to progress and I'm going to have a broader impact on society. But that's not always necessarily true. What you also need to do at a certain point is take a step back and say, okay, in that certain path, I've gotten to somewhere. Technical expertise or contributions will not add to my career anymore. Now I really need to broaden my horizon, elevate myself and take a broader look. That book was very helpful to me in a certain stage in my career where I was trying to evolve from a technical expert to a broader leader.
Right.
And reading that book, as well as interacting with Marshall, who was a personal coach of one of my sponsors, was immensely helpful. And that book has basically changed my career. So when it comes to a book related to my career, that's the book I would recommend to people. In terms of resources, the resources that I find most useful are the multi-stakeholder groups gatherings that exist. So in my space, some of the groups that exist, I had helped, along with a few others, set up the BCG Market Access Roundtable, which is a
Right.
big resource that has existed over the years where the global market access heads for all the key companies come together on a regular basis and essentially discuss policy challenges and issues in a pre-competitive space, being involved, having help set up, but also being involved with the BCG roundtable and being able to, look through these policy challenges and being able to work on it has been a fantastic experience and also has been a fantastic resource.
Right. Okay. I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions, if that's okay. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think the best piece of advice, I already shared it before, but I'll go back to it again. Build your brand and be a safe pair of hands. If you commit to doing something, make sure you deliver. Nothing worse than not being dependable and not knowing if the work will get done or not. So, yeah, being a safe pair of hands.
Right. One habit or ritual that keeps you grounded.
Many habits are rituals, and this might seem funny, but time in the day I look forward to, not the most, but it's almost a necessary thing I have to do is take my dog for a walk. I take
Oh,
my dog
yes.
for a walk every day for about an hour if I can. And that's my chance to reflect. If it's in the morning, it's a chance to plan my day out, what I'm going to do, what are some of the things that I need to accomplish today. If it's in the evening, it's reflection on how the day has gone. What have I done well? What can I do better? And how does tomorrow look like? So yeah, my walk with my dog Bandit is
Right.
my reflective moment of the day where nobody else bothers me. It's just her and me, and we can both enjoy the surroundings as well as think about the future.
Wow, that's amazing. And that time, as you said, is so profoundly relaxing. And it's your time where there are no distractions and you can just use that time to think about things. And it's just meditative in a way,
Yes.
isn't it?
It is a form of meditation, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Yes.
A place you've always wanted to travel but haven't yet.
Place I've always wanted to travel but haven't yet. Well, one comes to mind, and I've heard a lot, is Iceland.
Yes.
I hear a lot about Iceland. One place where Iceland just, became very, very visible was during their performance in one of the World Cups and the chant that they had, which then got, adopted and accepted by multiple different sports teams across the world. But even leaving that aside, I've heard it's a land of unbelievable beauty and
Yes.
wonderful people. I've always thought of, but never had a chance to visit, but look forward to visiting one of these days.
It's on my bucket list as well.
And I
If
also
you're
should
making,
mention while I'm saying that is, Iceland and Greenland. Greenland couldn't be more snowy and Iceland couldn't be more green. So don't confuse between the two. Greenland is wonderful, but I really want to go to Iceland.
yeah, that's a great destination. It's on my bucket list, and I hope I get a chance to visit Iceland too and see those northern lights someday,
Yes.
staying in an igloo.
And I hear they have wonderful hot springs that you can get into as well. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Right. If you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
One of my passions is grilling and barbecuing. And especially if the weather permits, I try to do it on a regular basis. I find it therapeutic. It feels good. But at the same time, I recognize grilling and barbecuing is not cooking.
Yes.
So, what's one skill I would like to master? I wish I was a better cook. I wish I could prepare, serve up dishes that spark people's imagination. My wife's a wonderful cook. I'm very fortunate in that sense. I try to do my bit with grilling and barbecuing, but yes, if I have a chance to a second career, maybe I'll take some cooking lessons and really try to become a better cook.
Wow, that's amazing. What's one thing about you that might surprise people that not many people know?
I think some people know, but most don't. I used to be I still am to some extent, but I definitely used to be a thrill seeker, an
Hmm.
adventure seeker. So mention any type of, I'll call it daredevil activity,
Yeah,
and I have done
adventure
it.
sports.
Yeah, talk about bungee jumping, talk
Oh,
about
really?
whitewater rafting, talk about skydiving, talk about zip lining. In my youth, I mean, every week it used to be, okay, what are we going to do this week? So, yeah, I love the adrenaline rush. And having done all of this, once I got settled with the family, as you can imagine, the scope of doing these things don't exist that much more. That's when I try to find my thrills in market access and encountering and dealing with the challenges of negotiating with governments and trying to get the
Yeah.
medicine reimbursed, but at the same time making sure innovation is paid for. But yeah, I love adventure and hope to get back to that at some point when the kids have left home.
Wow, that's amazing. I have to embarrassingly admit that I'm a bit of a chicken when it comes to adventure sports. I do sometimes go to amusement park with my daughter and she insists and I have to sit on rides, but I'm so tightly gripped and I can't wait for it to get over.
We all have our
Uh,
strengths and
yeah,
we all have our strengths and areas of interest, but I can see where you're coming from.
right. What's the most memorable moment of your career so far?
There are so many great moments, it's hard to keep track, but the one I'll mention because it happened early in my career is I worked at, now it doesn't exist anymore, but
Hmm.
Wyeth Pharmaceuticals many, many
Hmm.
years ago when it used to exist. This is when I had made my move from GSK, then GSK to Wyeth before going to Pfizer. I was at White for a very limited time, 2.5 years. During the 2.5 years, was able to really work on some early notions of value proposition. So how to develop, demonstrate, and communicate the value proposition. Did some early work on that. And this was actually with one of the groundbreaking biologic medicines, Enbrel, which was one of the first three biologics that got introduced to society and essentially changed how immunologic diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis,
Hmm.
psoriatic arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, and psoriasis would be looked at. But given my work in that limited 2 years that I was at Wyeth, given my work, I was recognized with the Wyeth President's Award, which is an
Wow.
award which only used to be given to be teams. I was the first one that got that as an individual, essentially by changing the way the company Wyeth looked at developing, demonstrating, and communicating the value of a new medicine. So it was early in my career, and being recognized by the then CEO Bob Esner on stage as an individual receiving the White President's Award was, yeah, it was an early moment in my career that really sticks with me.
Wow. That's those are the sort of moments we live for, the moments of glory.
Absolutely. And an acknowledgement that all the work that we have put through didn't go in vain.
Yes. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't think too hard about the
Hmm.
consequences. If your gut tells you this is the right thing to do, then go ahead and do it. I am at that stage now where I also even tell my team sometimes don't always wait for permission. We work in a world that's quite bureaucratic. There are a lot of rules. The one statement I always make in the beginning is compliance is non negotiable. So everything we have to do has to be compliant by law. But beyond that, I tell my team, don't always wait for permission. Do it. If needed, beg for forgiveness later on. That's the advice I would have given sometimes early in my career. I may have been too watchful and may have been hesitant to take some steps that I knew was right, that God told me, but I didn't do it. Today I'm able to do it, but if I did those earlier on, maybe my career would have taken a different trajectory. So be bold and take chances.
That's a wonderful piece of advice, and I read it somewhere that failing quickly is better than taking time to succeed. Failing quickly helps you grow faster than taking your time to get it perfect and then do it. So I totally agree.
Also, another way of looking at this is, you take a chance, you would succeed or you fail. So it's
Yeah.
50% chance. If you don't, it's 100% fail.
Yeah.
So
and
whichever way
and
you
it
look at it, taking the chance is a better option.
yeah. And at least you learn something from the failure.
Right, exactly.
Well, that brings us to the end of our today's conversation. Indranil, thank you so much for joining us on Drug Diaries today. Your insights into the intricate world of market access have been both eye opening and inspiring. From balancing affordability with innovation to transformative role of data in shaping access strategies, you've shed light on some of the most critical challenges and opportunities facing the healthcare industry today. It's clear that the work being done in market access doesn't just impact the pharmaceutical industry, it has a profound effect on the lives of patients around the world, ensuring that life saving therapies can reach those who need them the most. Thank you for sharing your expertise and for the invaluable work you do to bridge the gap between innovation and patient care. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, and I know our listeners will take away a wealth of knowledge from this conversation. Wishing you continued success in your mission to make healthcare more accessible and impactful. Thank you once again, and I hope we can have you back on the show sometime soon.
Thank you, Kaushik. Again, thank you for the invitation. It's been a true honor and pleasure to be a part of this discussion. Truly enjoyed the discussion, enjoyed the questions. It also gave me something to think about. Hopefully, the audience enjoys this episode and really
I'm
look
sure.
forward to continuing the conversation over time. Thank you for the good work you're doing and look forward to
Thank
continuing
you.
working with you. Thank you.
It's very kind of you, sir. Thank you.